Love and tolerance. When attempting to help people who are in trouble, either mentally or bodily, do not be worried or feel frustrated if your efforts seem to fall short of your expectations. Do not let expectations come into the picture, because if you do, and you are disappointed with the results, then you yourself are likely to become negative in your own thoughts. Because in many cases, you cannot see any physical change visibly taking place. This does not mean that your efforts to help have been wasted. They have not. Nothing that is positive and constructive is ever lost. It goes into the vast pool of pure thought that is being formed all over the earth plane. Because if the persons on whom your thoughts are centered have a karma to work out, then by your constructive help you can bring them into a fuller life of love and a desire to help others. And by so doing, they will be on the road to helping themselves. Eventually, we must all help ourselves. Others can show us the way, but we must use the tools for our own salvation when and where we find them. Continue therefore to light the way. And although you may or cannot by reason of a karmic condition entirely alleviate their lot, whatever it may be, you will have thrown a positive constructive thought into the scales for them. Sooner or later it will help them to balance out their debt by striving after the truth, so that they will cease to kick against the pricks of their self-created cause and effect. It does not matter if those you are trying to help do not react as you would wish and even appear affronted and antagonistic to your efforts. Everything is governed by the karmic laws. You cannot know what is causing people to act in such a way, or what is preventing them from fully cooperating with you. It may be the result of years of doubts and fears which have to be overcome. We have all had these negative thoughts at various times, but when we can recognize them as such, and with the gaining of knowledge we are able to reverse the process of negation. By countering with strong positive thinking and thereby weakening these intruders, we can finally close the gateway of fear through which all evil enters. We are told that Jesus said, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." Many find this hard to comprehend and harder still to carry out. He was not using love in its physical sense, but in its spiritual interpretation. He meant rather that we should seek to wish our fellow men the peace of mind that comes to those who endeavor to carry out the Father's will, the peace that passeth all understanding. We send out those thoughts of love every time we stretch out a helping hand, every time we show a light in the dark places, every time we feel the urge to pass on that knowledge which we have sought and gained. Sometimes it is good to delve down into the depths of our own consciousness when we are faced with problems concerning others and find ourselves critical. We may realize that at some time we have done the same thing, reacted the same way. Then it is we gain understanding and tolerance for our fellow travelers. Jesus also taught that before we could hold up the light of understanding to others, we must first have a knowledge of both good and evil. In other words, the master cannot teach unless he himself has had to learn the lesson. If this were practiced on the earth plane, there would be less suffering, sorrow, and strife, and the words of Jesus would come clear before our minds. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Chapter 10. What is prayer? The definition given to the word prayer in the dictionary is the earnest asking for a favor. Too many people, it has become a habitual ritual which is hurried through without any meaning as quickly as possible. I would say that those who pray in this manner are more to blame than those who have lapsed altogether. The former are hypocrites and are seeking a salve for their consciences, whilst the latter do not have any faith in its effects and by their actions plainly admit it. Prayer means to the majority the act of asking God for a favor. It is in fact, give me, help me, save me. This in itself is a wrong attitude, and prayer offered up in this negative manner will not achieve any constructive results. God, the infinite creator, does not have to be pestered with requests for this or for that favor. Mostly, we go to him as a last resource when all our human endeavors have failed us. We must never seek to pray in a spirit of, what can God give me? But how can I make myself worthy to receive and understand the wondrous benefits which he, through nature, has put at mankind's disposal? God dwells within the council chambers of the soul, and if we would find him, we must open their portals and commune with him there. We can only receive true spiritual understanding by striving after and making ourselves worthy of the knowledge and comfort we shall find in this way. Prayer should symbolize for us the manifestation of a thought. The thought that we are opening up the channels of inspiration between ourselves and the cosmic creator. Let us think of him as the progenitor of all things that are within his great limitless universe. We must cease to think of God as a being who is merely interested in the affairs of this very small part of his creation. He is in all places at all times. He is the beginning and the ending through all eternity. He is the essence in all that we see and cannot see in nature. He is universal creative thought which holds all things in being. If we would make contact with him, we must learn to control, transmute, and transmit our thought essence. And by so doing, we shall have earned ourselves an entrance into the treasure house of nature. The golden key will be ours, and as we grow in knowledge, so we shall find that it will open for us more of the hidden doors within the great universal mansion. We must of ourselves stretch out and acquire our knowledge through our own striving and seeking. God's jewel house has no locked doors, and he who has the desire to explore its rooms can do so only in so far as he is worthy through his own achievements. Ask, and it shall be given unto you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. These exaltations are the essence of the teachings of the ancient initiate brotherhood, whose chosen messenger for the age of Pisces was the Master Jesus, who came to rekindle the eternal age-old truths. Prayers will profit us nothing if we desire mere earthly things, but if we seek to obtain a knowledge of these truths which are eternal and which will endure, though earthly values change and crumble, then through first seeking the kingdom of heaven or cosmic consciousness, all things, as Jesus said, shall be added. When we pray, we should pray for spiritual knowledge. If we do this, we shall create a potential which forms a link between the God force without and the God consciousness within. Having built this bridge, constant usage of its roadway will allow the spiritual traffic to flow backwards and forwards, and with time and perseverance, knowledge will be accumulated. As our spiritual knowledge increases, our earthly lot will become easier to bear because material things will lose importance. Even as the light of the sun pales the candle flame so that it cannot be seen, so the acquisition of spiritual knowledge gained through constructive and selfless prayer will bring us nearer to God in complete peace within ourselves. This is the wisdom of the soul which perishes not, but lives eternally within the innermost sanctuary of the spirit of man. Chapter 11. What is imagination? One of the most urgent questions that man has been trying to solve throughout the ages is that of individual survival. In his quest, he has espoused many isms and cults. So far, factual proof beyond doubt of individual survival is still wanting. Spiritualism has traveled a long way along the road, but as we shall see in Chapter 13, there are many factors in the human composition which can be and are often responsible for much of the so-called spirit phenomena. We must realize that we are beings with physical and spiritual attributes, and as such, many of our functions originate from purely spiritual sources outside ourselves. Inversely, many can be traced to purely physical origins. This is where the trouble starts. Where does one begin and the other end? It is a very complex problem, and one that we must reason out ourselves and investigate very carefully before we jump to any false conclusions. Before we can attempt to assess the pros and cons for survival, we must examine ourselves to see if we have a balanced outlook. If our reasoning is purely materialistic, then all those things of the spirit will seem to us mad, and we shall relegate them to the rubbish heap of our reasoning faculties. If our outlook errs on the spiritual side, then our desire to produce the evidence may cloud our critical faculties and lead us along all sorts of false trails. What we have to do is to check all evidence that comes to us, even if we are faced with disappointment after disappointment. The best subject is, of course, yourself. You may think that you are not sensitive or a medium, and therefore it will be no good investigating yourself in this respect. Remember here that all faculties have to be trained before they can function properly, and it is only tireless effort in the face of apparent failure which will bring you to your goal. When dealing with yourself, you will know first of all if you are honest or dishonest, and whether you are resorting to deliberate and conscious fraud. Sift carefully all messages and phenomena which occur to see if they can be explained by physical or natural causes. Never discard the unexplained by the word imagination. What is imagination and where does it come from? It is a spiritual attribute and as such should be taken into account. It has its very direct link with inspiration, for it requires imagination to beget inspiration. It opens the door of spiritual perception and lets in the light of truth. What we receive we must of course interpret in physical terms through our brain cells, but the inspiration will give us that something which is all things, all knowledge in a flash, which will set the wheels of the material working and give us an insight into those realms, as yet only dimly perceived by the most mortals, who consider them too ethereal to warrant time being spent on their exploration. Only by diligent study can the way of the spirit be explored, and the soul come at last to cosmic atonement with the great creative spirit we call God. This spirit is universal and permeates all things. It is the dynamo which holds spirit and matter in their appointed places. It is the source from which comes the creative thought which encompasses and envisages everything. This being the case, it becomes obvious that within each one of us is the essence of that creative thought force, which, when fully understood, can put within our reach all the potentialities of the parent force. It is useless to say, why can't I do this or do that? I am not aware of any such force within me. The answer is plain. The treasure house of the spirit can only be unlocked room by room, and we must stretch out and find the key which will fit each lock of each door within God's great mansion. We shall not be able to open the doors of those rooms within our consciousness, which are as yet lacking the furniture of knowledge and understanding. To take an example, it would be dangerous for any individual to have the power of life and death over his fellows by the mere act of operating one of the hidden cosmic laws. This power cannot be permitted until the individual has mastered self to such an extent that no opposing force, however strong, could cause him to lose his spiritual balance and strike at his opponent from a motive of anger or revenge. The nearer we get to God, the more our material desires shrink and become of little importance. True spirituality manifests itself by its actions. It radiates love for all mankind, helping them to go forward in spite of the inconveniences that may be encountered personally in so doing. This is the law of cause and effect, and through its operation we can and do supply our own wants from out the treasure house of God. We attract to ourselves those very thoughts and actions we send out and operate in our daily lives. Often we expect to find in others what we ourselves have. We may even be conscious of our faults, and yet we do little to remove them. Faults become habits and as such are difficult to cast out of our natures. Seek and ye shall find. This exhortation can be taken in two ways. If you seek for the good in your fellow beings, then you will repel the evil. Like attracts like, and so you will find whatever you look for. Thus, if you look for evil, you will find it, and your relationship with your fellow men will be of an unpleasant or unfortunate nature. Seek God in all things and learn to keep his treasures under proper control. It is not always wise to let everybody know what is in the mind or in the making when commencing a project. It is therefore essential that individually we learn to control the transmission of thought Just as we on the earth plane receive thought impulses from the spiritual plane, so do we transmit either by word or thought to both incarnates and discarnates, any of whom may be desirous of frustrating or nullifying our plan. In this way, we create an opposition for ourselves and make our task doubly difficult. For this reason, it is necessary to use discernment, making sure that those whom we choose for associates are attuned to the same spiritual vibrations as ourselves. Spirituality is like the rainbow and exhibits many layers or colors of thought. In seeking to raise our spiritual stature, we should always keep this in mind. Whilst we must, of necessity, contact planes of thought that are inferior to or grosser than our own, for the purpose of helping and teaching, we must be careful how we accept messages coming from these planes. They may choke and cloud our own spiritual knowledge, making us a prey to all sorts of doubts and fears. Once we are launched upon the pathway of atonement, which means that with greater knowledge we have a greater responsibility to our Creator as well as to mankind, we must learn to discern clearly whether those things which come to us are from the higher or lower spiritual layers of the cosmic thought force. Those who aspire to the spiritual leadership of mankind must, through earnest striving and probing into the secret recesses of their souls, learn to unlock the many chambers hidden within this cosmic temple. We must not rely upon others, much less discarnate spirits who, in the great majority of cases, have not learned their earthly lessons and have, through protracted periods of trial and error, to return to the earth plane to continue their schooling. Yes, they have to reincarnate, an unpleasant word, I know, for many who do not like the responsibilities it implies. It should also make those who continually seek to communicate with discarnates realize that they may be getting all manner of mischievous messages, in fact often culled from their own minds by the entities contacting the medium. It may actually be only the lower or astral self of the medium operating in a telepathic capacity. Chapter 12. By their fruits shall ye know them. Group teachers from the higher planes of spirit are working today by use of inspirational telepathic contacts or thought rays. It is the work of many who have passed on and who have absorbed cosmic knowledge themselves to act as receiving and transmitting stations for these higher teachers, and so become in their turn the teachers and guides to circles or groups all over the world. These discarnates are known to spiritualists as guides, and are the same as the biblical guardian angels. Mostly, mankind is totally unaware of the fact that he has a spiritual friend who will help him through his earthly existences, and until such time as he is enlightened enough to find his own God contact. It is in this respect that the mischievous or satanicoic spirit plays havoc with those people who dabble in an uncontrolled manner in matters psychic, as has already been explained. Communication with the spirit world is opened by the throwing out of thought waves which contact and are picked up by any entity that happens to be tuned to your waveband. The open sesame is thought. Therefore, it is very necessary that people seek the right channels of entry into the unknown. They must know how to protect themselves from the psychic eavesdroppers and impersonators. Once the door has been opened to the wrong vibrations, it is very difficult to shut it again, and when a contact has been made, it remains and tries to establish itself in the mind of the person to whom it has become attached. Always make certain how you open this door, and be sure that you seek protection. This is done by thought and can be achieved in many ways. That is why the ancient initiates use signs and symbols with which to protect themselves. A symbol creates a thought in the mind of the sender, and is picked up by those who are of like vibration. One of the best safeguards for protecting thought is the sign of the Ankh, enclosed in the circle of life, which can be traced symbolically upon the solar plexus. Any contrary or negative thought will be unable to penetrate the barrier thus set up, and the way will be clear for right communication. Evil thought waves cannot break through and will drown, whilst the true knowledge will continue to flow. It is as well for us to realize at this point that each solar system within God's universe is a complete and separate entity from its brothers. Earth is the grossest of matter within the whole universe of creation, and the solar system of which Earth is a part is amongst the grossest of matter within eternity. El Daoud is the Father King, over all the spheres of matter and gross matter within the system. The whole of matter can again be likened to the rainbow because this symbolizes so much: color, light, thought, and materiality. Materiality is only a low form of spirituality, and lowest matter blends with highest spirit in a spectrum. There is no communication one with another of any solar systems because the forms of life force existent on these different systems are not collateral and could not exist with each other in any way whatsoever. Neither are they necessarily subject to the three-dimensional state of life. The same applies to the individual spheres of matter in any one solar system. Each individual world has its own cosmic organization and is as a stepping stone to greater knowledge within that particular plan. For instance, there is no interplanetary communication within our own system. Do not confuse material spheres, i.e. other planets, with interpenetrating spiritual spheres, from which the higher teachers minister to the spheres of matter and gross matter under their charge. When the knowledge necessary has been acquired on any world, the individual life force, in whatever form it may take, passes on to greater knowledge and the door is shut and barred behind it. Footnote 1. The Ankh symbolizes life, which is the creative God force, whilst the circle encloses and protects all who seek in true and impersonal spirituality. We here have to learn Earth's lessons upon Earth because they are only appropriate here. We have to learn them through trial and error, cause and effect. In fact, through reincarnation, and this will continue until such time as we have mastered our own selfish desires by finding the God consciousness within. We shall only come by truth through our own efforts and by opening the depths of our inner consciousness. The knowledge of how to do this is the key to divine wisdom. Many red herrings are being drawn along the track today, and in the original Book of Truth given through my hand and published by writers some 29 years ago, it is stated that at the commencement of the Aquarian Age, false teachers and prophets would arise, making all manner of fantastic claims to knowledge. It is the quality of the teachings that must be looked for when assessing communication. If we follow the great world teachers, we shall find their common theme is the effacing of self, and that atonement with God can only be achieved by self-striving and probing into the hidden chambers of our own divine selves. When we have mastered all the lessons to be learned in this matter, we shall be fitted to leave the earth plane and its astral spheres forever, and will go on to the mastery of that greater knowledge which awaits us. This knowledge we could not possibly assimilate or even remotely comprehend in our present state of three-dimensional ignorance. We shall get it only when we have raised ourselves to the state of having earned it, and not before. We have got to learn to sift when we are searching for truth and knowledge in order to pick out what really comes from higher sources as opposed to the various half-truths which appear in the guise of spiritual teachings. Interspersed among these are certain pirated truths which strive for life and light, but in their environment become dangerous, because many people at once assume that the whole misguided hodgepodge is true. I know people today who are so bemuddled with the multiplicity of books on the psychic and occult which they have read that they can't make up their minds where they stand. Once the consciousness is opened indiscriminately, then the astral ne'er-do-wells, who are always seeking for a chance to contact the incarnate state again, will play havoc by the hold they gain over the lives of the people they are deluding. I am often asked, how does one know what is right and what is wrong? This is a very difficult question to answer and depends largely upon the nervous and mental state of the inquirer. Never accept communications without preliminary protection, as has been explained, or without prayer. Ask and ye shall receive. Jesus said he was speaking spiritually. The true and earnest seekers will receive help from spirit if they ask for it, and above all if their motive is a selfless one. In other words, if they are seeking spiritual contact and knowledge for the benefit and upliftment of mankind. The astral mischief makers will fail when faced with truth and honesty. The pathway of spiritual contact is not sensational, and the contact will be in keeping with the motive that prompts the seeker. Spiritual progress is, as I have often said, like the spectrum. It has degrees or layers, and we automatically open up channels possessing like thought forces to ourselves. Do not be dismayed if at first you find that your advancement is slow or that you are not getting the desired spiritual contact. If the messages appear mischievous or contradictory or are merely on a fortune-telling level, then look for the nigger in the woodpile within yourself, because that is where it lies. If your seeking is entirely selfless, then you cannot contact other than that which you desire. It is all a matter of like thought attracting like, not spectacular or sensational. It requires quiet and humble concentration and study, a helping hand here or there. Like the Boy Scout, you must do your daily good deed, even if it be only a kindly thought transmitted through your consciousness to a soul in distress. Your thought will unite with all such other thoughts sent out and build up a great potential of help and comfort for that person. Remember, the present age does not differ from ancient or biblical days, and the channels of inspiration are open to those who truly seek for the teaching and upliftment of mankind, just as they were then.